What's going on? Julie Schatz here, producer, singer-songwriter, back at it with Splice today to bring you another tutorial. We're going to be talking about workflow this time. Arguably, this is the most important point in music production to make you a better producer. If you improve your workflow, you're going to be making more music, you're going to be making it faster, more efficiently, and you're going to have shortcuts to allow your brain the capacity to come up with the creative stuff. So, do you have mix buses set up in your DAW? Do you have presets for your favorite plugins? Do you have instruments already set up in a template maybe for your DAW, so you're ready to go with your beat making process? These are all really important elements to improving your workflow. So I'm going to show you 5 tips for improving your workflow, touching on some of the points I just mentioned, plus some other ideas for just improving your craft. Let's get into it. So tip number 1 is creating templates within your DAW. Now this works in any DAW. I'm using Logic here, but this is a project I'm working on, and I started off with a template that included a few different instruments, some mix buses already set up with effects that I normally use, and this just really will improve your process for getting started with a track, so you're not stuck with just having to arrange every track you need and all the buses to make your project work. This just gets you ahead of the game by having especially the buses where you can have all these plugins you can see I have set up already for my vocals, for example. I've got all my go-tos and even presets saved within these, and I've got different buses for whatever I may need. So if I want to send something to reverb or delay, I've got that set up. On this track I did record some violin, and I do have a violin bus set up as well with just some EQ and reverb, basic reverb. All of this I've set up in my template so that I'm ready to go recording my ideas down. And on that note, as I mentioned, to save presets, this is just super important. Any of these plugins that you may be using, save some presets that you find you're using really often. This will also help you in the creative process because you can see now that I have these buses set up, I can create the track up here and I can automate some of the effects in my arrangement. So this way I'm not having to set that up when I already have the idea of where I want to put some automation in. So it just really speeds up the process so you can stay in the mode of your creative design. Tip number 2 is to organize your samples. This may seem really basic, but it really is just super important. And you may have a different way of doing this maybe than I do. You can go by your own comfort level of having maybe different folders for various drums that you often use, or for other loops and samples you might use. For example, using Splice, I have a number of folders here where I've put in samples based on different genres. I have everything categorized here for various samples that I use or I like to use often. So that's really helpful within the Splice app. You can actually have those folders set up for any Splice sounds that you're using. So on this note, tip number 3 is to have samples in terms of maybe loops or one-shots that you've designed yourself, particularly loops, because if you have like a melody loop or a percussion loop, those are just great to have accessible for your creative process when maybe you're stuck and you have beat block and you're not coming up with ideas. Having those samples there readily available can just really help spark some inspiration. You could start a project with those exact samples. So either take the time to create some samples that you may use for later if you just have a burst of melody ideas, or steal some stuff from your older projects. Maybe there's some kind of loop that really worked well in another project that you feel you could use for a separate project. Save all of those in appropriate folders where you can access them easily when you're creating a new project. Tip number 4 is to focus on the aspects of your production process that maybe you're weaker at. For example, for myself, sometimes I have trouble coming up with the right hi-hat patterns, or I spend too much time on it, or too much time just figuring out the right drum groove. So I might take a hi-hat pattern from another project I already made and use it for a different project. Also, sometimes I'll just take the time to practice creating a specific drum groove or a hi-hat pattern and save that in one of my sample folders to use for another project so that I'm not stuck on just that one point. This will also allow me to just get faster at this one particular aspect of my production process. If I spend maybe an hour a day or whatever it takes for me to feel like I've gotten better at that aspect, I'll be faster when I go to a new project at creating that part of the project. On that note, practice using your DAW. Your DAW is an instrument too. Try to learn all the shortcuts and key commands that you can, and focus on areas you may be weaker on when it comes to using your DAW. And tip number 5 is a little bit more fun. Tip number 5 is to have a folder or a playlist of some sort where you have your favorite songs in there or recent discoveries of tracks that may have inspired you for various reasons. If you come to a point where you have beat block or you're just stuck on a particular project or stuck with creating something new, this is just really great to be able to go to some music that really inspires you and can create that energy and that drive to make a new project. I hope you found this helpful, and feel free to share some of your tips for better workflow.